Well, let me start off by saying this is not regular content for my channel. I do I do try to take a scientific approach to most things in life, and I try to avoid affiliating myself with groups that profess themselves as metaphysical. That said, I do want to explore neurobiology further and also contribute my own experiences to these various fields of study, and also be open about my own human experiences on this planet and on this channel. If this video gets good feedback, I'll probably make more content on these topics on the self-help and psychology section of my channel. So, a couple nights ago, I had a very vivid out-of-body experience that at some point transitioned into a lucid dream state, in which I actually got to interact with my own subconscious through a dream character interaction, which is insane to even put to words. But it happened, and it definitely is something that needs to be investigated further. This is something that I've tried to do for years through lucid dream states, and I've always failed. It seems like this time I just kind of caught my subconscious off guard in some inadvertent activation of the temporoparietal junction. There's a predominant problem in storytelling when it comes to comprehension and empathy. The listener will never be as excited to hear the story as you are to tell it. And this is doubly true for things that the listener has never experienced before themselves, especially things like lucid dreaming and out-of-body experiences. So I'll attempt to share the story with as much detail as I can, but I realize I can only go so far. I do truly feel that human language really seems to fail us at these types of disclosures. When I say things like feel or seems like, it really doesn't do it justice when I'm trying to describe the experience of experiencing yourself outside of your body. Feelings are not facts, and that's one of the things that can really get you into trouble when you start talking about things like this. So please do bear with me, and I'll try to use as much detail to describe this in the best way as I can. When you're in these states, you feel as if you have, there I use the word feel again. When you're in these states, you experience these events using all 5 of your normal senses, just as you would in regular life. But when I say it feels more real than real, your senses aren't worn down as they have been on your physical body. For instance, when you're flying through the air in a lucid dream state, it's as if you have a baby's body, like you have your entire nervous system working at 100%. Your taste, your smell, your sight, everything's working at 100%. Any vision loss that you've experienced over the years in your regular body is simply not there. At least this has been the case for me, and I haven't asked other people about this yet, but I do plan to investigate this further. There's a statement that circulates in mainstream science that goes something like, consciousness is the biology that we simply haven't discovered yet. I do hold this statement to be quite tangible, and I do believe that someday we will have a scientific explanation for all of this. Even if it is something like panpsychism or panspiritism, we're going to have evidence for this, but I still feel like we're a pretty good ways off from that, as we really understand very little about how the brain works as a whole, even now. During this discussion, I'm going to be referring to my own subconsciousness as it or he a lot, just because it's really weird to use 2 different forms of I, so bear with me in this. So with that long caveat given, here's what happened. A couple nights ago, I stayed up, and I've been sleeping really bad lately since this virus hit, and just over the last week I've started a keto diet, and I've started doing Wim Hof method breathing exercises, and really just worked all of my schedules and my regulations in my life, as well as using kratom, and I've used kratom like off and on about twice a week for the past I'd say like month or so. It does seem to have a lot of benefits, and it helps with focus and things like that. But it's starting to affect my sleep, it seems like, and yeah, I definitely stayed up till 7:30 in the morning. And it was around 7:30 or 8 a.m. that I had just been laying in my bed, flipping back and forth. And as I laid on my right side, I started to feel my sleep come on. And a lot of times when I feel myself starting to fall asleep, I'll be able to catch that. My thoughts will start to become randomized, or they'll start to like merge with other thoughts in really weird ways, but it's noticeable. And sometimes that'll even include songs. As a musician, I usually have music that's going through my head at all times in the far background, and this will come to the forefront when I start to fall asleep. So the song that started to play in my head sounded like this. As the song grew louder and louder, I began to feel this really weird sensation that I was kind of being like diverted into a strange mindset, and it was very DMT-like. I don't know if you've ever experienced dimethyltryptamine. I'm sure some of the people watching this video have. And you experience it every time you dream. Apparently, the pineal gland is excreting DMT, which is something that causes dreams, apparently, or at least something that contributes heavily to dream states. And when this hit me, it hit me like DMT, and I began downloading some kind of message, which is also very typical of DMT experiences. And the name I gave the entity that was giving me the message was Sadhguru, which is actually a living human, but I haven't listened to him in years, and I don't even remember what he sounds like, but for some reason that's what my brain did. But he gave me some amazing message, and of course it was incredibly profound, and of course I couldn't remember it at all. So as I kind of came out of that experience, I tried to reflect on what he was saying and really tried to grab it. And as I was trying to reflect on it, I felt incredible senses of euphoria and absolute bliss. I suppose what most people would call nirvana, who have meditated deeply in these areas. And that was astounding. Definitely nothing I've ever experienced before, even on DMT or in psychedelic states, consciously. So that was really cool, and I basked in that for a little bit. And then that's when I physically felt somebody grab me by the ankles and pull me up out of my body, and I was literally hanging out of the air. So here I'm gonna have to like pause and describe what feel like, or what the word feel means in this regard. When I've had these experiences before, and out-of-body experiences, many people also relate that they feel like they have a weight on their chest, or when they go into sleep paralysis, they feel like an actual physical being is sitting on their chest or sitting on them. I've, in the past, felt that a being was sitting on my feet, and I've popped out of my body out of excitement, out of that, like, what is this? And I've sat up and pointed at my feet to try to identify what was sitting on them. And that was crazy. That happened a couple years ago. In this case, I actually felt something like absolutely indistinguishable from what it would be like in real life for somebody to grab you by the physical ankles and pull me, and it wasn't a yanking sensation, I shouldn't say. It was like a gentle pulling out of my body. None of this experience was unwarranted or unwelcome feeling. It was very it was a very warm and friendly feeling, like I almost wanted this to happen. And so, as I'm being pulled out of my body, my feet are like straight up in the air, and but I don't come completely out, I guess, or at least I'm not pulled completely up, but I am pulled out of my body, and this is when it gets really weird. So I start spinning around, not of my own desire. It's something is spinning me around, or I mean, I assume that it is me that's doing this in some portion of my brain or another, but I start spinning around, and I spin about 4 times, and I notice I'm trying to like verify this, so I don't want to ruin the experience. I have my eyes closed, so I just barely peek with one eye, and I look at my ceiling. I can see my ceiling rotating, like in accordance with my own projected body's rotation. And to confirm it further, I stick out my hand, and I can very physically feel the tactile sensations of my hand dragging around on my bed. And yeah, that was super trippy, and again, it feels almost more real than real, which another time where I feel that words are lacking, where I wish I could find better words to use than feel. So that goes on for, yeah, about 4 rotations, and it's a very gentle rotation. And then I gently come back into my body in my original resting position on my side, which was also very, very welcoming feeling to actually come back into your body. And yeah, this already makes me sound crazy, but this is an incredible experience that many people have shared and needs to be explored. So that was a couple nights ago. So what happened last night was even crazier. I again stayed up until like 8 in the morning or so, and I had like a lot of thoughts going through my head, and was constantly like rolling over, taking notes on my phone, and then putting it back, and then having more thoughts, and then coming back, and then I felt the sense that I was starting to fall asleep again, and then this time it was more controlled when I came out of my body. This time I actually like realized this similar feeling was setting in that had happened a couple days ago, and I started to, I took my hand out of my hand, like I was laying on my left side this time. I took my hand out of my hand, and I took my head out of my head, and I just kind of like lifted myself out of my body. And so this was really weird. I floated around in my room a little bit, and I started doing things like I would do in lucid dreaming states, where I like phase through walls and phase through the floor. And so I go out my room and I go down the hall, and there's a set of stairs, and so I just to have fun, I start like phasing through the stairs and then like catch myself halfway and physically push myself up with my hands up out of the stairs. And then I go down the rest of the flight of stairs, and then I realize that the room I'm in is no longer the house that I'm familiar with. In fact, it's a completely new house. The living room is much smaller than the one that I'm living in, and I'm living with my parents at the moment right now. I go down, and they're sitting in this living room. I'll paint you a picture. There's a nice hardwood floor, very welcoming, very warm environment. There's a recliner and a leather sofa and another couch sitting adjacent to that. So there's a couch, recliner, and a sofa. So my dad is sitting in the sofa here, and my mom is sitting, or the recliner here, and my mom is sitting in the sofa over there. So this has happened before, where I've interacted with the dream characters, and I believe this is when it started to become more of a lucid dream, or transition into that state, I guess. And so I go up to my mom, and I'm like, again, because I've interacted with my mom before in lucid dreams, and I've floated above her, and I've been like, yo mom, what up? I'm floating, check it out. And she's like, oh, that's nice, sweetie. And so this time I go up to my mom, and I'm like, what up? I'm floating again, check it out. And she's like, oh, that's really neat. And I was like, no, you're not getting away with this time. And so I'm like, yo, I'm flying, you're gonna acknowledge this. You're going to acknowledge the fact that I'm flying. And I was pretty persistent about it, and so my mom just stands up, and she starts walking towards me and starts walking past me, and she stops and she says, okay, you got me, the jig is up, let's have it out. Except she says it in my dad's voice, and that's when I knew something had clicked. That's when I realized that, oh, okay, I may have just broken through to my own subconscious. And so she turns to me, and it's my dad's face, and that's when it got really trippy. So my dad now sits down on the adjacent sofa to my left, and he just sits down and like leans back a bit, and he's like he's about to like break some knowledge or something, you know. And so I'm like, okay, what can I do from here? What can you tell me? And so I'll pause here and give you a description of what this was like. So my subconscious was still clearly trying to fight me from speaking, and it came out in the form of me not having control of my bottom lip. Actually, my bottom lip kind of like covering over my mouth like this. So every time I tried to talk, it came out like this. And not only that, I also had the sensation, like very clearly, of a finger being placed over my mouth like this, not like vertically, but like this, trying to physically silence me, and that persisted throughout the entire experience, as well as my lip not working properly. So, again, the manifestations of the self-preservation mechanisms of the brain trying to keep the conscious brain from interacting with the subconscious are very, very interesting and creative at times. So, my dad's first thing he says to me, and this is going to get personal, and I don't care because this is really valuable insights that need to be expressed, in my opinion. He at first says to me, you feel like you don't want friends. You feel like you're not deserving of friends. And that really hit me like a ton of bricks. I almost cried in dream state, whatever that's like. And this was some real insights he was giving me, because I have for most of my life felt like I'm not. I've never really felt like welcome, which is apparently something that's very common of autistic people. Not only do they not feel like they fit in, but they feel like they don't like belong very well in friend groups, and they certainly have like speech problems. And I've had speech problems for pretty much my entire life, up until the last like 3 or 4 years. I've really cracked down on it and done some like used intervention methods to try to overcome that. And throughout most of my life, I've come to expect that I will only have a friendship for no longer than 6 months to a year before I end up saying something without my filter on, or end up saying something hurtful or judgmental, and it'll usually people won't bend to that. Usually they won't give you any grace. They'll just end the friendship. So yeah, that hit me really hard. And then he proceeded to say 2 more things, which I could not remember, or I tried to remember, but I could not record them because when I woke up and tried to record them on my phone, I found that I had no space on my phone. So wasn't that just a wonderful slap in the face of fate? But so he said 2 other things that I can't recall, and then he told me that if you want to be successful and if you want to have a business online, you need to be presenting yourself more professionally online, which is really ironic considering what I'm doing right now. This does not seem like a very professional type of thing to be doing with my channel, but I digress. I remember asking him, is there anything else you could tell me? And because yeah, I asked him, like, I'm struggling very hard to keep in this state. Is there anything that you can tell me? I don't mean to rush you. But any wisdom that you can invoke on me, please do so as soon as possible, even though I was talking to myself. So the last thing he said was that you're welcome to check in anytime in your inbox, which was really weird and metaphorical, and at first I took it literally. Over the last few weeks, my dad and I have been off and on kind of communicating through email, but that didn't really seem like something he would actually say. And then I remembered that this is my dad speaking, this is me taking the form of my dad speaking to myself. And so I realized that what he was actually saying was that you're welcome to do this anytime. You're welcome to check in on your subconscious through these tangential means at any time that you desire. This is not something that's unhealthy, it's something that you should feel welcome in engaging in. And that really hit me hard, and when I had that realization, that's when I lost lucidity and everything went black. And it stayed black for about 3 seconds as I tried to fight the oncoming darkness and tried to bring it back, but I failed and I woke up. I should also mention that my dad's face also had elements of my own face in it, and I tend to have dry skin sometimes that'll flake off of my skin, and I saw my dry skin on his face, and I also saw parts of my face in his face, which is weird because I'm actually adopted. After I woke, I tried to activate the out-of-body experience again by using the rocking technique, and this is something that I have learned from out-of-body experience groups. You can just gently rock back and forth and then slow it down, and sometimes you'll feel yourself coming out of your body. And I did feel that. I felt myself starting to shift, or a second me that was delayed. When I'd shift one way, another me would come this way, and then this, and so on. But I never got to completely come out. Now, I also want to express details on this. As I was doing this rocking technique, it got really, it gave me extremely intense waves of positively valenced paresthesia, which is essentially frisson, I believe is the way it's called in typical neurobiology. It's essentially chills, when you get chills from your spine to your neck from hearing, or from your spine to your feet or whatever, from hearing very powerful music or seeing a very powerful scene in a movie. This is also very similar to what happens when you hear nails on a chalkboard, or something you grit your teeth the wrong way, and it also sends chills down your spine. That's called negatively valenced paresthesia. The difference between those is literally the circumstances that bring it on. So positively valenced means positively caused. Paresthesia is what happens when you get the skin tinglies. This is obviously very positive, and I'm one of the people that can activate this sensation consciously, which apparently a lot of people are showing signs of being able to do this. It's something that we've always thought was a sympathetic nervous system response that we're now able to actually activate just by thinking about the powerful scene or the powerful song. And when I activate this myself, it is usually quite pleasurable, but it doesn't last for too long, and it's never as intense as it was in this experience. This was just me focusing on the rocking technique and then experiencing just waves of this sensation from head to toe. That was very interesting. It was far more intense than what I would feel it from listening to powerful music or a movie, as well as trying to trigger it consciously. This experience has really shown me just how strong the brain's self-preservation mechanisms can be. When I say self-preservation mechanisms, what I'm referring to is essentially the type of ego that keeps you sane, I guess. And there's examples of this that I've learned about recently where your brain will actually shut off the nerves in your hand when you're holding your phone and you can't find your phone. So you're looking around for your phone, and your brain doesn't want to let you know that you're that stupid that you actually have your own phone in your hand. And it'll also shut off the nerves in your thigh if your phone's in your pocket. And you just know for a fact that it couldn't be in your pocket. And there's countless examples of this that are being revealed in recent neuroscience studies. And so I'll give you one more example of when I try to interact with a dream character. It's short, so bear with me. It's just hilarious, and I feel that I should share this. So this was a couple years ago, I think, and I'm cruising around in this beautiful castle with like lots of pews and church-like steeples and things like that. And I come out of the castle into this like a top floor kind of balcony situation. And I bump into one of the people working for NASA that had recently discovered Ultima Thule. Ultima Thule is a 22-mile wide long asteroid, essentially, that's sitting out in the Kuiper Belt. Actually, it's an unformed planet that just never got around to acquiring enough mass to become a planet. And it's being studied very deeply right now at NASA still. I think they discovered it about 2 years ago. And so I'm talking to this guy for some reason, and I'm like, yo, what up, I'm dreaming. I was like, what can you tell me? And I realized that he does work for the government, because NASA is a government company. I guess that played into what he said, but he responds with, the government is definitely not spying on you. The government is not trying to infiltrate your dreams. Do not worry. And so I'm just like, what? And so I don't know why my subconscious came up with that explanation. I definitely don't buy into many conspiracies. I realize there are real government conspiracies out there, but most of them are false. There's no government that are trying to infiltrate my dreams, but that's what my subconscious came up with to, I guess, fit that character, which is also hilarious. But I digress. Oh, I should also mention that the out-of-body, or the experience that I had with the downloaded message from the DMT entity or whatever was, it was extremely hard to remember, which is not like my dreams. I can usually remember my dreams pretty well. This instantly disappeared the moment I came to, and that's very typical of what happens in DMT experiences. I really try to explain these things neurochemically and put actual neuroscience words to it, but these are the things that really make me question just what it is to be a human experiencing life in the world today. There are countless ancient traditions that focus around the idea of activating these out-of-body states, and of course many of those have contributed to religious and spiritual ideas, and also contributed to what can be gained from certain meditative states. This really does seem like some kind of uncommon disjointed theta state occurrence that can happen just from your brain not getting into theta state the right way, like from sleep deprivation. And I should also mention that all the out-of-body experiences that I've had in the past, of which I've had about 6, they've all been the result of serious sleep deprivation. A couple I had 2 nights in a row where when I was working 12-hour overnight shifts in a rubber factory in Alabama. And one of those experiences, I was also vertical, like with my feet in the air like this for a while, and then the next night I was like this, parallel with my body. So, now that you've heard the story, let's look at some of the neuroscience behind this that we do have. There's countless articles on this online, and just looking at a few of them, I didn't really have to search very far, and one of the first ones that I found is really, really good and pretty much covers all the topics that I wanted to look into on this, so I'm really only going to use this article. That being said, this is from, I think it's Medical News Today. That being said, I'm going to be quoting a lot of this article, and a lot of it I'm just going to be reading straight from the article. So if you guys at Medical News Today see this video, please feel free to flag it or take it down. I mean, I don't want to step on any toes here, but great job, fantastic article. So here we go. So Medical News Today released this article in 2017, and it begins with, quote, 10% of the population has experienced out-of-body experiences at least once. So there must be more to it than a simple desire to live forever or an overcharged imagination. I think that's a pretty good assumption. They say the 3 main ways that a natural out-of-body experience can occur are from sleep deprivation, extreme physical effort, and, of course, near-death experiences, or NDEs. The three main ways that externally induce out-of-body experiences are drug use, specifically psychedelics like DMT, LSD, MDMA, and ketamine. The next one is sensory deprivation or sensory overload, and sensory deprivation can come from like tanks and things like that, and overload can come from things like torture or extreme pain situations, which can also result in it seems like your brain just being like, nope, I'm not going to go into anaphylactic shock. We're just going to shoot you out of your body. This is too much to handle. And a lot of people have reported results like that. And the third one is strong G-forces. Pilots and astronauts actually report experiencing out-of-body experiences quite often, as blood can partially drain from certain parts of the brain during these times. This is referred to as gravity-induced loss of consciousness. Sometimes during standard flights, pilots can experience odd sensory experiences, which are usually referred to collectively as spatial distortion, or SD. In one particular SD episode, known as the breakoff phenomenon, a pilot may feel as though they are sitting on the wing watching themselves fly the plane. It says that SD, or spatial distortion, is considered one of the most common factors contributing to aviation accidents. That means that out-of-body experiences are so common, in fact, in these altered states, and it's so easy to trigger these temporal parietal junction experiences that it's the main cause of airplane accidents. It continues, perhaps the most controversial aspect of out-of-body experiences is veridical perception, which is the claim that during an out-of-body experience, the viewer is able to literally float out of their body and witness something or someone that they could not have otherwise seen. A well-known example is the case of Pam Reynolds, a brain surgery patient who underwent a highly invasive operation to remove a brain tumor. Following the surgery, Reynolds was able to describe aspects of the procedure that had happened at a time when she was clinically dead. She claimed to have surveyed the scene during an out-of-body experience. As I'm sure many of you know, there's countless reports of these things happening in hospital settings. The experiment continued. To investigate whether any individuals have genuinely floated above themselves and viewed their surroundings, researchers actually placed pictures on shelves that would only be viewable from above. And this way they could test whether people experiencing out-of-body experiences could actually leave their bodies. Although there were only 2 actual vertical OBEs during the study, neither of them could actually relate the images from the shelves. There's going to be a next phase in this experiment, which they say they eagerly await. As the author writes, another veridical recall is a real possibility in the 1,000 plus monitored cases, and who knows, that ever-elusive visual recall may yet be found. The article continues. It says that direct brain stimulation can also be a cause of out-of-body experiences. So in 1955, a Canadian neurosurgeon named Wilder Penfield electrically stimulated the brains of people with epilepsy. On one occasion, he stimulated a patient's right temporal lobe, and the patient exclaimed, "Oh God, I'm leaving my body." Our brains do such a wonderful job of pinning us in reality that we often forget that the pins are an illusion, and can therefore sometimes be shaken loose. Blank, one of the scientists involved in the Swiss experiment, believes that OBEs are related to a failure to integrate multisensory information from one's own body at the temporoparietal junction. The temporoparietal junction is a location that collects a range of information in the brain. It's a hub of activity with inputs from the thalamus, which relays sensory information, and the limbic system, which is important for emotion and memory, which also explains a lot. It also takes data from the visual, auditory, and somatosensory areas of the brain, or systems. Somatosensory is responsible for bodily sensations, which relates to the positively valence paresthesia, which I described earlier. So the TPJ integrates information from the external environment as well as from within the body. It's thought to play a part in the distinction between self and other, which makes the TPJ a prime contender for the seat of OBEs. Why OBEs should happen to people who are otherwise healthy is still a mystery, though. Perhaps the illusion is, physiologically, no more significant than many other tricks of the mind that we take in our stride, such as déjà vu. The difference with OBEs is that they attack our sense of self, something that we hold very dear and yet tend to take for granted. For a moment, we feel ethereal. We feel as though we're not one, seeing our flimsy, transient nature. Of course, our personalities, our emotions, our memories, and desires are all little more than peaks and troughs in energy levels and surges of chemicals. We know this, but our brains do not normally allow us to feel these things. Now, we've all seen ourselves from outside in the real world. in things such as photos and mirrors. And we can also use our imagination to see our rooms from above and weave fairy tales around that in our minds. Therefore, it's not such a push to imagine that our brains could manufacture an out-of-body experience and present it to us as a fleeting reality. Our brain does a mighty job of hiding the truth from us. We feel as though we are a solid singular entity with our mind and body combined and secure in their rightful places, a monolith in the cosmos, I like the way they put that. Out-of-body experiences unravel the sense of self, proving that we are a little more than a skillful neurological illusion after all. I'm glad this article mentions the way OBEs play on our sense of self. I've long felt that in the metaphysics community, they've never directly expressed this notion to me, but what I've come to feel after discussing scientific explanations for things is that it seems that science just seems to take the fun out of everything. It takes the magic out of the human experience in a way, and this I've often contended with. And I've had friends bring this up to me. A very close friend of mine actually talked to me about this recently, saying as kind of a warning, like, be sure to remember to live in the moment and not just overanalyze everything that you experience in life. When we talked about this, I tried to express to him that it's only enhanced my life experiences. It's only helped me to live in the moment that much more, realizing that the atoms that compose the molecules that make up my body are similar to the atoms and the molecules in this very chair that I'm sitting to, and the keyboard that I type on, and the computer that I look at to type this script. This has not only consciously, but it seems also inadvertently, unconsciously, contributed to my own connection with my existence on this plane. This being said, I do want to find a way to try to portray these messages without seeming to take away from the magic. The whole of the human experience is incredibly baffling, and I just want to encourage us to seek more ways of activating these states naturally as far as we can. I do believe that eventually we will get to a point where we can cranially stimulate through EEGs or whatever, like stimulate these states, like in the experiment from 1955, or take a pill that stimulates the temporoparietal junction. But for now, the best that we've got is these meditative states that have been a tradition for millennia. And unfortunately, when you say something, just even saying the word meditation, it immediately has the connotation of spirituality, when this, in my opinion, is a very strong tool for activating these states. I mean, obviously it can just happen from accident. So I'll get into my own personal opinion on things now. I believe that we really have to be careful when we use terminology, especially saying things like chakras or kundalini or crystals, or the use of specific crystals to activate certain things. This is when you're really getting into, well, opinion. There's no research behind this whatsoever. And of course, some of that's a result of us not being able to research these things, but I also want to express the value in these things, which is activating the placebo effect, and whatever kind of physical tools you have to use to activate the placebo effect, such as what's called a worry stone, or something that you can use to reduce your own stress. I mean, those definitely have value, and that should be taken seriously. I mean, I know people that carry a worry stone around in their pocket. When they get stressed out, they rub it, and it takes their anxiety away, or at least it helps them relieve some of that. This is why we sell stress balls. This is why, like, in the cubicles in which we worship to our computers and sell our life force for money, we have a stress ball to take away some of that reality of what's actually going on under the surface. I bring this up because I try to seek out groups online to discuss these things with, and when I post things like this on forums and like out-of-body experience and lucid dreaming, astral projection forums, I'm usually met with people stating for a fact that they know that if you hold a rose quartz crystal, you'll activate a loving sensation, and if you hold hematite, you'll stay grounded. So when you project out of your body, you don't get thrown around by an entity or something like that. And it's the connotation and the language that's used in this that really gets to me. You can't just say that you know for an absolute fact that if you do this, it'll work. That's, in my opinion, stepping into hot water. Now, I could directly shame these people, as many atheists do, and coming from an atheist perspective, which I am, or at least a non-indoctrinated human, you can really step on toes and you can really hurt people's feelings. I do believe there is value in these things called worry stones. I'm really using air quotes today a lot. If you see a specific stone that speaks to you, see, there we go again, it may have value. It may just be that this stone that you find value in some part of the photons that reach your eyes that trigger feelings of empathy or emotions in your brain, trigger the placebo effects with that specific stone. So if you hold that on your body or on your forehead or whatever during an out-of-body experience, it may very well have those effects of making you feel more grounded or actually affecting the way your subconscious brain talks to you in those lucid states. So there's definitely tangible value to that. I should mention that I've had about 6 out-of-body experiences and probably 100 or so lucid dreams. Every time I put zero effort into it. I've tried to... I do the counting my fingers thing and like checking my reality pretty rarely, but I do that for lucid dreaming. But I put no effort into trying to have out-of-body experiences. Every one of them has happened completely by accident and completely by sleep deprivation, it seems. Like when I do the techniques to activate lucid dreams, it's very rare, maybe like for a minute to like 5 minutes a day, usually like right before I go to sleep is when I remember to do it. And you're supposed to be doing this actively throughout the day to help yourself remember to check your reality in dream state. This, to me, it shows that there is wide variance in the way people can experience lucid states. Many people report having lucid dreams every night, like it's never been a question for them. A lot of them say that they just thought this is how everybody dreams. And then there's people that report never dreaming, or at least never remembering their dreams. There's definitely a wide variety of this, and I highly encourage the people that have these occurrences happen naturally to go get a sleep study done, or go to Johns Hopkins University or some other prestigious academy that's actually looking into these things more deeply and contribute your experiences to the field. Anyways, I should say, as scientists, we should try to remain open-minded in our fields of research. We're only going to further our fields of research if we remain open and empathetic and always non-judgmental, yet always wary of where to draw the line. I believe that this is something that's quite lacking in the scientific community and every community. Ego and opinion still seems to be at the core of every human's experience and every field of research, and this is something that I want to discuss further on this channel. I should also mention that there is actual tactile utility to be gained from being in a lucid state. If you're practicing guitar or something, or like dance or anything that requires muscle memory in a lucid state, you will apparently retain that in your waking life. Now, I haven't had the chance to do this. Most of my lucid dreams are pretty short, or at least I just forget to do things like that because I'm having so much fun flying a car around in Harry Potter land. But it's something that you can actually do, and this literally gives you an edge on the competition if you can practice guitar for longer than other people, or like write music in your sleep. It's a great advantage. We have to remain open-minded and also use proper scrutiny. If someone talks about using meditation or breathing exercises or some other ancient techniques that seem to be very hugely successful for most humans, we should acknowledge that and not just write it off as some hippie mumbo-jumbo. These techniques may be successful, but still lacking in biological research, and this may just be a sign that this is something that science has yet to catch up with in its research. I want to encourage us to examine all of the wonders of the world and sciences objectively, and use critical thinking and first principles at every opportunity, remaining non-judgmental of what works for people to help them find balance in their everyday lives, and whatever works for them for activating these otherworldly experiences, as entertaining and crazy sounding as they may be. They definitely have a lot of value. Unless they're making money off of selling telepathy classes or astrology predictions or tarot card readings and other psychic forms of prediction. No! Back! You stop! Not you. You're fine. It's funny, my dog's behind the camera and she thought I was doing that to her. It seems pretty clear to me that these kind of activities can have misleading impacts on people's lives. And this is where I do feel very strongly about this, and also want to talk about this further in other videos. When it comes to things like tarot card readings or astrology signs, these do provide senses of belonging and also provide categorizations, and I think it's kind of dangerous to put humans into categories like that for a multitude of reasons. Like a tarot card will say that you need to avoid certain things during certain seasons or certain months, and pursue other things in your life, that it gives you predestination that makes you make different choices that you may not have made otherwise in your life's path. Tarot cards will also tell you things like, don't pursue a relationship this month, and it may just have very well been that this is the month in which you should have pursued that relationship. When we go with astrology signs, you're talking about saying that you shouldn't date this person just because they were born in this part of the month or according to this planet being lined up with another planet. This eliminates the possibility of you finding a soulmate or, you know, finding the right relationship partner. This is very dangerous, and if you're making money off of these things, I really think you should reconsider your career choices. There's plenty of healthier ways to make money in the world, in my opinion. If you're doing things like doing psychic readings or trying to commune with the dead, now you're talking about trying to get people to not let go of their past, their relatives and their ancestors. Now, of course, there's value in feeling like you're talking to them, and I've actually seen people break through and talk to their dead friends on DMT experiences, which of course has great value. But there's a certain point where you're selling those techniques after years and years where they're not moving on. They're simply trying to like hold on to these memories of their lost loved ones. In my opinion, that does seem a little unhealthy to continue to engage in for a long period of time. As I study psychology and cognitive behavioral therapy, I come to hear from many experts that personality is malleable. The fact that you can change your life direction and your personality is a fact that I have truly lived myself, and I only want to profess this as an option for everyone, as a reality, and not subject people to certain personality traits just because of the day of the month that they're born on. Again, it brings to mind the idea of predestination. I'm not even going to get into telepathy, but I will say that if telepathy worked, that would be amazing. We wouldn't need cell phones anymore, and whoever actually figured out how to do it properly would clearly be worthy of a Nobel Prize, and we haven't seen that yet, so that's all I'm going to say about that. Again, if you're doing this for fun, that can have benefits, but it also clearly leads to misleading possibilities and misleading your life's direction. I'm probably going to expand on this further in another series that I've been working on a series of essays called The Fine Line Between Mainstream Science and the Fringe. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope I haven't stepped on any toes or compromised the legitimacy of my own channel, but I'm sure I'm going to get some interesting feedback from this. If you do value this kind of content, please feel free to leave me comments or anything like that. I'm still growing this channel from its infancy. I'm trying to see which direction to take it or in which new channels to make based off of the different topics that I'm focusing on. One of which is heavily concerning cognitive behavioral therapy and psychology. I love all of you. Please remember to keep exercising empathy, patience, and compassion at every opportunity as you wield your meat bag across this crazy space rock. What goes around comes around, literally. Thanks for watching, y'all. I'll see you on the next one.